Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with Be Reborn Art and Healing. Today I'm creating for Shawn Petite's creative team, creating this beautiful 8x8 wood panel, a little bit simpler project than I normally tackle. I tend to go over the top with some of my stuff, and so it was really nice to just create something a little bit simpler. These are some of the supplies that I'll be using, and some background paper, some vintage book and music pages from my stash. This is the Mosaic Mediterranean Mini Stencil, the Windows 2 stencil, and then this is Vintage Wallpaper 1, and I didn't end up using that one, and then my 8x8 panel. I did gesso the surface there just with one light coat, just to make sure that I didn't have any issues with my paper lifting, as I have had that issue in the past when creating directly on the wood panel. So that's why I'm giving it a coat of gesso. And I'll set that aside here. And then I'll be working on the rice paper and the window frame. I really loved this technique because I was able to still see that beautiful rice paper behind the window, and the window just framed it beautifully. It was really gentle, really simple, and I really, really liked it. So I'm using my archival ink in coffee color and just going around all of that stencil, creating my frame. And then I'll be cutting that out and then adhering it to my background. I did ensure that I had a solid piece of text paper from an old book page behind this window, because I didn't want there to be a lot of bulk, and I didn't want competing layers and things of that nature under the window. As you'll see here in a moment, I reserved some space for that with a piece of book page. So I'm going to be adhering all of my papers with my Liquitex matte medium. And again, these are just papers from my stash, some vintage papers that I received from a friend. So I'm just going to adhere those really quickly. And then there's the space I reserved for the window. And I really loved how it turned out, because the text is really subtle in the lighter spaces in the window, which I thought was just a really beautiful touch, and I was really pleased with it. And then there's the finished collage background, and then there's just that wording is just absolutely beautiful. And then this is the Vintage Wallpaper 1. I'm going to use my super heavy gesso to stencil that on, because I wanted it to have some really good background texture. As the piece is fairly simple and doesn't have a lot going on, I thought the super heavy gesso would be a great element to bring in on this piece. I did come in with my small palette knife as well with the super heavy gesso, and just used it kind of scraping a little bit more of that gesso on in the open spaces on the project. In retrospect, I wish that I had left those flowers to be a little bit more visible, but they weren't. But that's just kind of the nature of the mixed media process. You often have to sacrifice the background, as Shawn often says, and I find that definitely to be true. And this is, I had dried it with my heat tool almost completely, and then I came in with my paper towel, because I love pressing the paper towel on the surface when that gesso is still a little bit sticky, and creating a little bit more texture. And then here's my penny black script stamp. This is a Paris stamp, which I really love. It's my absolute favorite. So there's just a close-up of that. Coming in with some really lighter colors, because I wanted to be able to maintain the light, airy feel of the piece, even though I did antique it and vintage it up a lot. Using these lighter colors was really, really beautiful. So I used that baby pink, and then light buttermilk, and then this, I believe it's called Hosser green light. They're all deco art paints. And I'm just going to use my finger to just play and get all that paint where I wanted it. And then I did come in with my small palette knife here in a moment, and use it to scrape on some of the paint, so that I would have more of that textured wall kind of feel to the project. So you'll see that here in just a moment. I didn't dry between the pink and the buttermilk because the buttermilk is all it's going to do is make the pink a little bit paler. So I wasn't too concerned about that. However, I do dry before I come in with my, with the green. And then just dabbing it a little bit just to soften some of those places that were a little bit bold. And then here coming in with my palette knife, as I mentioned before, just to kind of get that kind of a scratchy, scrapey look to the wall here. And then there's just a close-up of that. I do come in with the penny black script stamp again because I lost some of that, and I really, really like that look. And I love how it accentuates the texture of the gesso. So you'll be able to see a close-up of that again here in a moment. And then here coming in with the green, and again, I did dry in between just to ensure that I didn't have any mixing that I wasn't expecting. And so just again, using that small palette knife to just kind of scrape that paint down to just give it that kind of peeled paint wall look, which I thought was really beautiful. And I think I captured that in this piece pretty well. And then there's a close-up again of that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful texture. And then this quote that I chose was one that says, "You will always be with me like a handprint on my heart." And I was really not terribly inspired to create. I've had a really hard time getting in the studio. I haven't been feeling well for quite some time. And so I wanted to grab something that would be refreshing and simple. And so I just grabbed a quote from my stash. Even though I kind of just grabbed it, it did have meaning. The sentiment is very meaningful to me. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you might have an inkling of why that is. But and then I came in with my golden raw umber fluid acrylic and just defined that frame, darkened those lines quite a bit. I wanted it to really pop off the background. It seems really bold here, but in the end, it is really beautiful because I do come in with a raw umber glaze over the entire piece, and that was enough to really tie everything together. And yet, I was able to maintain the light of the background. So I'm coming in with my coffee colored archival ink again, and this is the Mediterranean mini stencil. And this one that I'm working on here is actually one of my favorite background stencils. I have it in the large size as well, and really, really love it. And then I'm going to come in and use my baby wipe and kind of pull back some of that paint. Because I really like the scratchy kind of skippy effect. Skippy, it's not really a word in this context, but you know what I mean, just to kind of give it, to kind of push it back a little bit and make it look old again to go with the rest of the wall. I really liked the effect. And here I'm going to come in and do my raw umber glaze using my golden raw umber fluid acrylic and my golden glazing medium. And I'll be applying the glaze over the entire piece other than the window section. I didn't want that to get any duller than it already is. I wanted it to really stand out. And as you'll see in the final piece, I believe that I was successful at doing that. So here I'm wiping it back, just wanting to give it a little bit of an aged feel without being too dark again. And then I did want to make sure I wiped the sides so I didn't have any wet, drippy paint, as I wanted my sides to be pretty clean. And then here again, here's my sentiment. I did cut it up into pieces, and then just playing with the placement there. And then I'll be applying that with my Liquitex Heavy Gel. And the reason for the heavy gel is because there's a lot of texture underneath where the words are going to go, and the heavy gel works the best for that. Takes a little bit of very little effort, and it adheres really, really nice. And then I'll be coming in and doing my script again because I did lose it in some of the layers. And so not quite so much here, just a little bit here and there, just to kind of bring it back. My favorite stamp, I think, of all time for backgrounds. And I love that it's a soft stamp that I can just grab it and it's really easy to work with. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my edging with my Rembrandt soft pastel. I have the Soho soft pastel as well in black, but it tends to be really messy and it breaks and stuff. And this one is just not quite as messy, so I enjoy it. And then I'm going to use my charcoal pencil to shade around all of my words. And then I do wipe a little bit of it off of the actual paper because I wanted to retain, again, that light color of the sentiment. And there's just a close-up of the whole thing. Quite beautiful. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and that I hope that you'll check out all of the creative team posts. Check out ShawnPetite.com. She's an amazing artist, inspirational, has a lovely product line. Her stencils are fantastic. So thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video. Take care of yourselves. Thank you. Bye-bye.